Welcome to this edition of the Click and Pledges Fundraising Command Center podcast, where we talk the why, the what, and the how in the Click and Pledge ecosystem. This is the Why series, and today we are tackling a really foundational design challenge. It's something that impacts, I think, every nonprofit organization that's trying to grow online. We're calling it the invisible form. And for today's deep dive, we are going to challenge a core assumption, which is that a donor needs to spend their time telling you things you probably should already know.
Yeah.
Our mission is to understand why the ideal donation flow has, well, 0 fields.
And that idea, the 0 field ideal, it might sound a little bit like science fiction, some kind of wishful thinking, but it's actually the standard for modern commerce. It's what people expect now.
Right.
So if you're a nonprofit and you're still relying on these complex multi-page forms, you're basically subjecting your donors to what we call interrogation marketing.
Interrogation marketing, I like that.
Yeah, and we want to show you the strategic need to just eliminate every single piece of that friction, every unnecessary question. You do that by letting the technology deduce the answers.
Okay, let's unpack that. To get to that level of radical simplification, we recommend looking completely outside of the fundraising sector. We need to look at legendary design that really change what consumers expect.
I think I know where you're going with this.
And that's where we bring in Steve Jobs. He famously, and I love this, he viewed any physical button on a device as a failure of design.
That's absolutely right. For him, a button it was a confession. It meant the device just wasn't smart enough to figure things out on its own.
It's asking the user for help?
Exactly. It's asking the user to make a decision to input data that the device should have just anticipated or deduced from the context. And this isn't just some fun anecdote. It's a huge shift in thinking about user experience.
Well, yeah. And if you think about the shift that philosophy created, it's just astonishing. I mean, we went from the BlackBerry era, right?
Oh, yeah. The thumb keyboard.
40 physical keys, a complex menu, all of it demanding input from you. And we went from that to the iPhone, which offered one contextual screen. There wasn't just aesthetics. It was literally eliminating the mental work of 40 different decisions.
It really was. The design standard went from how many features can we cram into this thing to how little do we actually need from the user to get them where they want to go. The system deduces your intent when you check the screen instead of making you hunt for a specific button. And that level of simplicity, that expectation, it's now just baked into every modern consumer experience you have.
Except it seems for fundraising.
Often, yes, except for the donation experience.
And that brings us right to the point. If the iPhone replaced that 40-button BlackBerry, what's the fundraising equivalent of that obsolete, clunky device?
Well, unfortunately, I'd say most generic online donation forms are the BlackBerry of fundraising.
That's a great way to put it.
Nonprofits are just, they're stuck in that old interrogative mindset. We're so guilty of asking for data we don't truly need and demanding answers to questions where the context, the page they're on, the device they're using it, already gives us the answer.
And that's where people drop off.
It's where the most significant drop-off happens, especially for those spontaneous, smaller gifts.
Okay, let's detail some of those specific failure points because they're the things that are killing that momentum you mentioned.
Yeah.
When we look at the data, 2 habits really stand out that we recommend eliminating immediately. The first is what we call the address problem.
The address problem is just pure unnecessary friction. So think about it. A donor is on their phone, they're moved by something, they decide to make a spontaneous $25 gift. They're committed, they want to give, and then boom, they hit a wall of mandatory fields. Street address, city, state, zip code. Why is this still happening? We really recommend against asking for the address when the user is already authenticated.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. I know our listeners are thinking about their compliance meetings. If we stop asking for the address, are we sacrificing data we need for tax receipts or for our records, especially for, larger gifts? Where do you draw that line?
That's a critical question, and it really speaks to how you segment the system. For a large gift, a gift that's tax receipt dependent, then yes, that data is absolutely necessary. And the robust long form is there for that.
Okay.
But for the vast majority of spontaneous small to mid-range mobile gifts, the answer is no, absolutely not. If the donor is using a digital wallet like Apple Pay or Google Pay, they've already verified their identity with their face or their fingerprint.
Biometrically.
The transaction is secure, the user is verified, and the wallet already has the billing address. So we suggest that demanding redundant constant manual data entry at that exact moment is actively annoying the donor. It's killing your conversion rate for data the technology already holds securely.
That makes perfect sense. You're making the technology do the work, not the donor. Okay, so the second major mistake we recommend eliminating is the intent problem.
The intent problem is just as frustrating, I think. It's when we ask the donor, so where would you like this money to go? When they've already answered that question just by being where they are.
Right, by what they clicked on.
Exactly. For example, a donor clicks a button that says, sponsor a service dog for a veteran, and then the form they land on is just this generic portal that asks them to reselect service dog program from a drop-down list of like 10 other programs.
Oh, I've seen that so many times.
They've already told you their intent. Asking them again just slows down that emotional momentum and forces them to reconfirm something that should just be automatic.
And you said it before, momentum is everything in spontaneous giving.
Yeah.
So if you introduce those two friction points, an address you already have, an intent the page already defined, you're basically guaranteeing drop-off.
You are.
So that brings us to the ultimate goal here, this zero-field ideal. It's not a form at all, is it? It's more like a trigger for an action, a direct line from inspiration to completion.
And we get to that ideal by sticking to one golden rule of new interface design. This is the foundational philosophy we recommend. Don't ask when you can deduce.
Don't ask when you can deduce.
This system has to be smart enough. It must deduce every possible piece of intent and identity data it can from the context of the donor's environment.
So that shifts the whole focus then. It's not about optimizing a clunky form anymore. It's about creating these intelligent giving capabilities that are just everywhere.
That's the strategy we recommend to achieve it. We call it omnipresent context. Instead of forcing every single donor to one generic Donate Now page, which is just a bureaucratic bottleneck, the donation capability should be embedded, ubiquitous across your entire site.
Okay, let's get concrete. Walk us through how that deduction process would work in a real scenario.
Sure. So imagine you, the donor, you're on a nonprofit's website. You're reading this really detailed, moving story about their scholarship fund for underserved youth. You feel that pull, you feel compelled to donate right now while that emotion is high.
Okay, and the traditional mistake here, as we said, is to send me to a main donation page where I'm forced to find scholarship fund in a list of 5 other options and then type in all my info.
Exactly. But with omnipresent context, a payquick.ly button is already right there. It's floating on the scholarship fund page itself. And when you click that button, the magic of deduction starts instantly.
So what's the first thing it deduces?
Intent. Immediately. The system knows your location, it reads the specific URL of the page you are on, and it automatically tags that donation to the scholarship fund. The donor never has to type or select a single thing.
That handles the intent, which is huge. But what about the other friction points? What other deductions are now standard in this zero-field framework?
Well, the beauty of modern tech is that we can make several key deductions instantly just by leveraging the context of the device and the page.
Okay.
So first, we deduce the payment information. We recommend against asking for the card number, the expiration date, any of that. The digital wallet, Apple Pay, Google Pay, it already has it stored securely. It just links it.
Second, we're deducing the verification and address. We recommend against asking for the address manually.
Because the biometrics, right, the FaceID, the fingerprint, that secures the transaction and validates the user right there on the device.
So that covers the 2 big problems we talked about.
And third, and this is a really powerful deduction that's often overlooked, we can deduce the suggested gift amount and frequency.
Ooh, now that's interesting. How does that work?
Well, if you're a known donor, the system should recognize your device and your identity instantly. If you've historically given $100 every quarter, we suggest that the system should present the $100 recurring option as the primary one-click choice.
So you're using their history as context.
The context of your past giving informs the suggested future action. It removes the need for you to type in an amount or choose a frequency. It's already done.
I find that third point really powerful. You're moving from just optimizing a checkout to proactively predicting behavior based on their own data. But what's the technical lift here? For a nonprofit to move from their current generic form to this omnipresent capability, that sounds like a big project.
It does require a shift in how the backend systems talk to each other. The technology has to be integrated so that the environment, the website, the donor's wallet, their past giving records are all communicating seamlessly with the transaction portal. And that's precisely why we advocate for tools that have this level of contextual awareness built in. It allows the technology to do the heavy lifting of data collection and security in the background. The core value we provide is moving the focus away from optimizing a bureaucratic data entry process to optimizing an instantaneous emotional action.
So we're really optimizing for the mobile, spontaneous, time crunch donor, the real growth engine for a lot of organizations.
Right.
But you did mention earlier that the traditional robust forms still have a place. We're not saying get rid of them entirely for, say, the legacy donor who likes that detailed desktop experience.
No, absolutely not. The full spectrum of options has to exist. You have to be inclusive. For the donor who wants to sit down at their desk and meticulously enter every detail for their tax records, that traditional long-form path must be available.
Of course.
But our strategic focus for new donor acquisition for growth with that modern mobile demographic, it is entirely dependent on removing friction, making that path from inspiration to completion instantaneous. And that's where the deduction framework is just crucial.
It really changes the whole paradigm. It goes from being a mandatory bureaucratic process to just a quick emotional trigger, one that respects the donor's time and their motivation.
And to summarize it all, contextual giving leverages everything the donor's already doing, the page they're on, the device they're holding, their own giving history, to complete the transaction seamlessly. When we stop interrogating and we start deducing, we respect the donor's spontaneous impulse. And when you do that, you see significantly higher rates of conversion and completion. It just works.
So here's a provocative thought for you to mull over. Think about the longest form you currently ask a donor to fill out for a small gift. Look at every single field on that page. How many of those are truly essential, required by law or finance? And how many are simply a failure of design questions you should have already deduced the answer to? That gap, that's where your next major gain in fundraising efficiency lies. For more information about this and all Click and Pledge products, make sure to visit clickandpledge.com and request for one-on-one training or demo. Whether you are a client or curious about our platform, just ask us and we will gladly get together with you to chat. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest features of the Click and Pledge Fundraising Command Center.